Why the building is closed?
Well, we were advised by the attorneys to close the building. The building shouldn't be open. They're risky.
I think they take this serious. I think it's a big game to them, and they don't understand that the more confusion and the more back and forth that we do, no one suffers.
The spectacle that took place under the direction of Tiffany Henyard, who is referred to as the self-proclaimed super mayor, is the most recent contentious phase in her already turbulent political career. To comprehend the insanity of the meeting, imagine a cross between a high-stakes soap opera and a courtroom drama, with heated yelling, finger-pointing, dramatic walkouts, and accusations being thrown in all directions. The event was unlike anything the township's residents had ever seen. The atmosphere in the room was so tense that it was almost tangible, and the trustees were left feeling extremely frustrated, further depressing the township's already bleak future as they struggled to understand the drama that was playing out in front of them. The atmosphere was tense from the start of the meeting, and Henyard wasted no time in establishing a combative tone, continuing a month-long chain of controversies surrounding her leadership, accusations of poor management, corruption, and extravagant spending that followed her for a while. She was quick to attack township trustees, accusing them of ignoring their duties and the needs of the community. Her remarks became more and more venomous, and she wasn't just criticizing the current board. She also attacked previous no-shows, accusing trustees of their absence during significant choices. The meeting's tone quickly changed from tense to chaotic as Henyard intensified the arguments. The professionalism that one would anticipate at a government meeting was absent, as there were harsh accusations, finger-pointing, and emotional outbursts. For many attendees, outbursts are becoming the norm. This was not just a political meeting, it was an impromptu political theater performance. One infuriated attendee likened the proceedings to an old-fashioned wrestling showdown, complete with over-the-top rhetoric and dramatic monologues delivered with flair. Although the description may have sounded exaggerated, it fit the mood of the evening, particularly for individuals acquainted with Henyard's rough term. But there were important implications for the township's administration that went beyond the spectacle. Several trustees vehemently retaliated after the meeting raised serious concerns about whether the local government was still operating in the community's best interests or had turned into a partisan battleground. They accused her of misusing township funds, charged her with dictatorial leadership, and said she put her personal grievances ahead of the community's needs. The trustees and Henyard's trading heated up the exchange. She framed herself as a resolute warrior fighting against entrenched opposition, suggesting that the establishment was determined to thwart her efforts to serve the community. At one point, Henyard declared, "If you want your job, I'll do it for you." This statement inspired some supporters in the room, but it also drew harsh criticism from those who saw it as a blatant power grab and an indication of growing authoritarianism. Still, Henyard remained composed and unfazed by the chaos, intensifying her criticisms. A trustee became irate and slammed the door behind them as they left the meeting, causing the audience to become agitated. Responded audibly to the blatant political infighting that was taking place. Henyard, however, portrayed herself as the victim of a plot to discredit her, accusing political rivals of planning what she said were ongoing assaults on her authority as the conference veered more away from its original plan. The topic of conversation led to more general problems the township faces. Due to financial mismanagement, important project deadlines were missed, and allegations of township monies being embezzled were made. Critics of Henyard's charge her with participating in careless spending that indicates her attention to opulent projects was tone deaf to the concerns of a community facing crumbling infrastructure. Public services being delayed and residents becoming more disillusioned at the end of the night, it was evident that the meeting had only deepened the rifts between Henyard and her detractors. Both sides had dug in their heels, and Henyard remained steadfast in her defiance, presenting herself as a leader. Public safety was also a hotly debated topic, with accusations that township resources were being diverted to protect Henyard personally rather than being spent on broader safety measures that might benefit the community. The conversation, however, rarely moved towards concrete resolutions. instead amplifying the divisions that had already existed in the township since Henyard's rise to power. Her opponents, however, saw her behavior as representative of all that was wrong with the current state of the township government, including unclear leadership, a lack of direction, and a hostile atmosphere that left trustees and residents alike tired and mistrustful. No real answers were given to the frustrated residents, and Henyard remained steadfast in her position. The meeting had not brought any clarity, only more confusion and division, further highlighting the administration's growing dysfunction.
Not at the hearing here today. Neither was her attorney. She was not made a...
Doran Township is battling a developing issue that spans despite a heated meeting to address this issue. No resolution was reached, and instead the gathering descended into chaos with blame flying in all directions, passionate speeches, and growing frustration from all parties. The most prominent figure in this conflict is Mayor Tiffany Henyard, whose defiance and accusations further fueled the tension. This incident goes beyond political disputes and directly threatens essential community services. Since December 1st, the township has been without insurance, leaving both residents and employees vulnerable. Henyard did not hold back when accusing the township trustees of negligence during the meeting. She said that the insurance renewal was canceled because the trustees had repeatedly missed previous meetings. She encouraged residents to make direct contact with their trustees and demand that they carry out their responsibilities. The increasingly antagonistic atmosphere in the room echoed what Henyard said, but her critics quickly seized on her charges, accusing her of using the insurance crisis as a political ploy to pressure the board into advancing her personal agenda. One of her most outspoken critics, Trustee Chris Gonzalez, did just that. Do not mince words. When he criticized Hena's approach to the problem, he claimed that Han's handling of it was both ineffective and purposefully divisive in order to increase her own power rather than address the needs of the community. As tensions increased and voices were raised, the meeting turned into a spectacle of accusations without any workable solutions emerging. It became evident that there were deep divisions between Henyard and the trustees, which further prevented any meaningful progress. Dysfunction within the township's leadership was on full display, and the spectacle only made residents more anxious as they watched the chaos unfold, leaving them with little hope that they get their vital services back amidst a storm of protest. What should have been a fruitful conversation about obtaining insurance instead devolved into a battleground of personal grievances and power conflicts, and the trust accused Henyard of using her position for political gamesmanship. Although her supporters continue to rally behind her, Henyard's political scheming and the lack of progress on essential services have left the township at a standstill. The continued dysfunction has sparked concerns about the future of community leadership, and the lack of insurance is just one example of the increasing number of unresolved issues that citizens encounter in the absence of competent leadership. Rapid declines are occurring in the township's capacity to maintain and safeguard the services that its residents depend on. Once the gathering was over, the chaos exposed a deep political and personal divide in the center of Doran Township. Henyard trustee Chris Gonzalez, formerly her ally, is now one of her harshest opponents. Gonzalez's alignment with State Senator Napoleon Harris, Henyard's most formidable political rival, has further deteriorated their relationship. This newfound alliance has added tension to the proceedings, signifying a deeper political rift with far-reaching implications for the township's prospects. When Gonzalez accused Henyard of taking advantage of the insurance crisis to pursue her political agenda, their anger escalated during the discussion. Aspirations, this is all about control. Gonzalez told the room in a frustrated and defiant tone, "They can't beat me, so they're trying to block me at every turn." His statement exposed the personal stakes in the ongoing feud, turning what should have been a conversation about governance into a furious power struggle for Henyard. The accusations were part of a story she had been crafting for months, according to which political forces were trying to undermine her leadership. In contrast, she presented herself as a victim of a conspiracy, alleging that her political rivals were utilizing every available tool to thwart her attempts to assist the people. In response, Gonzola pointed out how the township had deteriorated under Henyard's administration and questioned her intentions, which served to further solidify the idea that her management style was erratic and authoritarian. Some township employees were moved by this criticism and expressed skepticism about Hen's capacity to lead successfully. "I definitely regret ever nominating her." The persistent conflict between Henyard and Gonzola became symbolic, according to one employee, symbolizing the rising disenchantment with the local authorities. The meeting dragged on, and both sides threw verbal insults, exposing the growing dysfunction within the township's political structure. Henyard's supporters quickly rallied to defend her, accusing Gonzalez of opportunism, while others saw the political divide as a sign of the township's inability to function cohesively. Henyard's defenders contended that Gonzalez was taking advantage of her current struggles to further his own political career, claiming that his alliance with Harris was a calculated move to increase his influence. Furthermore, some argued that his criticisms of Henyard were others, however, thought that Gonzalez's criticisms were a sincere attempt to discredit her and establish himself as a more capable leader. Many of her critics characterized her as becoming more authoritarian and unwilling to consider different points of view or cooperate with other stakeholders in order to address the public dysfunction that extends beyond political conflicts. Senior transport, which many residents depend on, and after-school programs for kids could be negatively impacted if the township is unable to obtain coverage due to the ongoing insurance problem. The township's capacity to deliver these services is directly linked to the capacity of its leaders to collaborate, but this has become more challenging as political and personal grievances take precedence over the needs of the community, and the ongoing uncertainty surrounding their future is making residents increasingly frustrated. Her leadership has been portrayed by Henyard's detractors as polarizing, with the failure to address important issues such as the insurance crisis as proof of her incapacity to steer what should have been a simple conversation about the township's future, but instead turned into a series of blame games with neither side prepared to make the required concessions. Even while she has devoted supporters in some places and speaks defiantly, her leadership is becoming more and more viewed as divisive and ineffectual. Thoron Township's greater dysfunction is exemplified by the political spectacle surrounding the insurance catastrophe. The question of whether Henyard can survive the storm of criticism and maintain her position is still up in the air. Her critics, supported by alliances like Gonzalez's with Harris, are determined to change the township's political direction, but as long as political rivalries and personal grievances continue to dominate the discourse, the township's capacity to move forward will remain in jeopardy. Conflict highlights the larger problems in Thoron Township, where internal conflict has replaced effective governance as the hallmark of leadership. The political climate is becoming more unstable every day, and the residents of the township are left to wonder if their leaders will ever prioritize the needs of the community over their own personal goals. For the time being, the insurance crisis and the political struggles surrounding it are likely to continue to be a major focus of the township's political drama, and a solution to this crisis is still elusive.
Dalton, except in one case, Tiffany Henyard launched on a ballot, while in another, a Henyard ally.
A continuing issue in Thoron Township is mostly caused by the conflict between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the Board of Trustees. At a recent contentious meeting, Henyard publicly accused the trustees of purposefully impeding progress by portraying them as Saba with the sole intent of harming her reputation. She said, "They're sabotaging me because they know I'm standing up for the people." Her bold accusations sparked heated debates, but the trustees swiftly responded, with one declaring in private that Henyard's leadership style was the true obstacle to progress, calling her domineering and unresponsive to criticism. When someone disagrees with her, she labels them as being against her since she thinks she knows everything. Because of the ongoing impasse and deep-seated animosity, the township is becoming a battlefield where even the smallest decisions can spark fierce conflicts. Personal grievances are not the only cause of this poisonous political environment. It also indicates deeper dysfunction. A number of concerning issues have surfaced, such as claims of money loss, inexplicable expenses, and the use of public cash for dubious purposes like extravagant vacations. The ongoing financial investigation by the FBI into the Henyard administration is concentrating on potential financial. The position has been made more difficult by malfeasance, while Henyard has categorically denied any misconduct and framed the investigation as a concerted attempt to weaken her authority. In a recent public comment period at the Township, Henyard repeatedly accused her political enemies of undermining her efforts, portraying herself as a victim of a larger conspiracy. She claims that these attacks are part of a deliberate campaign to forward her progress and prevent her from fulfilling her duties to the people. The investigation and surrounding political drama highlight the leadership breakdown and its detrimental impact on the community. At a township meeting, supporters expressed their indignation and questioned how they could maintain their faith in the administration in light of the many unresolved issues. Many citizens are losing faith in the administration, and their worries extend beyond Henyard's allegations of concerted political attacks. Due to the township's financial mismanagement and high-seeming lack of concern for fiscal responsibility, the community is becoming more divided. Her supporters continue to be devoted, claiming that Henyard is defending the people against an unfair system, but many others believe that Henyard is fighting a corrupt system. They believe she is the cause of her own issues, which rings hollow Henyard's divisive management approach, which some view as authoritarian and self-serving, has further alienated locals. Her failure to build bridges has drawn criticism, with many believing that she has not been able to bring the township's various factions together to pursue shared objectives. This lack of cooperation, coupled with the ongoing scandals and accusations, has damaged her reputation even among people who could relate to her struggles. The leadership of the township has become even more distrustful of her as her decision-making has been questioned, and she has a tendency to respond defensively to any questioning. This dysfunction has major ramifications for the township's future. A stalled insurance renewal is one of the most urgent issues that has left vital services like senior transport, including rides to dialysis treatments, grocery shopping, and medical appointments in jeopardy for the elderly and vulnerable residents who depend on these services. The township is still embroiled in internal conflicts, and the needs of the community are still being neglected. Many residents feel exposed and abandoned as a result of the township's political battles, which have turned the ongoing political unrest into a matter of life and death. The services these residents rely on are not just conveniences. They are vital lifelines that guarantee their survival, and inhabitants' growing annoyance with the township's disregard for their needs over internal conflicts is evident in their well-being. At a recent community gathering, a resident expressed their deep despair over the current state of affairs, pointing out how the township's leadership had allowed crucial services to teeter on the brink of collapse. They said that this isn't just about poor governance, but about people's lives. What should have been a time of unity and decisive action, particularly in securing necessary insurance and stabilizing services, has instead devolved into a cycle of bureaucratic failure and political infighting. Others in the room shared this frustration, calling the township's leadership shameful for failing to recognize the seriousness of the situation and the urgent need for action. Residents' ire is not limited to Henyard. Many have expressed their belief that the leadership of the township has become more focused on personal grievances and political power struggles than on meeting the needs of the community. The internal conflict has not only disrupted services, but has also eroded the residents' once found trust and reliability in their elected officials as the situation worsens. It is evident that Thoron Township is experiencing a leadership crisis of previously unheard of proportions. The stakes are higher than ever, and the longer the political infighting continues, the more harm will be done to the township's standing and effectiveness. The most vulnerable residents of the township, particularly the elderly, are bearing the brunt of the ongoing political unrest, and their stakes could not be higher. The township is in a state of paralysis as a result of the mayor and the board of trustees' inability to cooperate for the common good. Decisions that should be furthering the interests of the community are instead mired in bureaucratic limbo. And the township-level chaos has a direct effect on their life, and they lack a functioning government to help them. As long as the leadership is embroiled in conflict, the township's capacity to meet the needs of its citizens will continue to be jeopardized for many. The question is not just one of governance, it is one of survival. If the current course continues, the community's trust in its leaders will continue to erode, and the township's once bright future may be lost in the chaos of internal strife. These residents are left to handle a growing crisis on their own. More people are speaking out against the leadership, saying that their inaction has left the community in chaos. Critics say that this lack of accountability is not only bad for politics, but also unforgivable, especially for the elderly and other vulnerable residents who depend on vital services that protect their independence, health, and general well-being, and are now in jeopardy because of the ongoing crisis. It's time for the leadership to concentrate on workable, real-world solutions that safeguard the most vulnerable and end the ongoing instability that has afflicted the township for so long. The community's message is sufficiently obvious from the finger-pointing and political wrangling. Too long, the situation is dire, and without immediate action, critics warn that the dysfunction will only worsen. The cost of inaction is not just political, it is deeply human. As the crisis continues to unfold, the stakes for Thoron Township's most vulnerable residents are growing every day. The town has reached a critical point, requiring swift, thoughtful, and compassionate leadership qualities that have been sorely lacking up to this point. Some residents expressed their dissatisfaction during a recent meeting's public comment period, calling for Mayor Hurd's resignation and demanding accountability from the Board of Trustees. Meanwhile, the township's financial problems are getting worse. Took center stage, with trustees fighting over who should pay their bills first. This public dispute further exposed the board's deep divisions, and there is currently no clear resolution in sight. Henyard herself rejected any compromise, dismissing attempts to address the insurance crisis and telling the trustees, "I'm not here to negotiate." Her combative leadership style, which is characterized by an unwillingness to collaborate and an overemphasis on personal battles, has made her increasingly unpopular with many board members. Her ongoing lawsuit against the Thoron Township Democratic Party has further exacerbated this animosity. Her detractors point to her controversial financial decisions as more proof of her incapacity to lead, citing her extravagant trips, undisclosed expenses like an $85,000 concert, and dubious dealings with her now-defunct burger company. That disqualified her from the ballot for the upcoming township supervisor election was unfair, according to Henyard, who also claims that her supporters were locked out of the venue, preventing them from voting. State Senator Napoleon Harris, who chaired the caucus, denied her claims, arguing that the process was fair and according to the rules. Have increased accusations that Henyard is more concerned with safeguarding her own interest and political career than meeting the requirements of the township. The township's financial problems, such as a delayed insurance renewal, have left vital services like senior transport in jeopardy. Many locals are disillusioned by the ongoing turmoil surrounding Henyard leadership, particularly her choice to organize a bingo night during a financial crisis. There are still no solutions in sight, and the trustees and Henyard seem unable to cooperate, and the tax levy negotiations have ended in confusion, leaving the township's budget unresolved. Meanwhile, the employees of the township and the people who live there are still suffering because the township's leadership is stuck in a seemingly never-ending war for control. A lot of people are using social media to express their frustrations. With or without the trust, help should be able to secure the necessary insurance to stabilize the situation of question now facing the residents, whether Henyard can turn things around or if it's time for new leadership altogether. One commenter expressed disbelief at the dysfunction, saying that this is the most dysfunctional leadership I've ever seen. Although she maintains that her actions are about protecting democracy and giving the people a say, the current situation presents a different image. It is unclear whether Yard can weather the storm or whether her critics will be able to change the direction of the township's future after a chaotic meeting where no meaningful progress was made. The residents of Thoron Township are left wondering what the future holds. Will the leadership be able to put aside their differences and work for the good of the community? Or will the dysfunction continue to spiral out of control one more time? The township's most vulnerable residents, who depend on. There is little doubt that the crisis is far from resolved, and the victims of the fallout will be the locals who are caught in the middle. Until we meet again, thanks for watching Visual Vortex.